Hello and welcome to the main evening news here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Well, as we've just seen, the protests in Georgia continue. We will be examining the troubling situation there in just a minute. But first, a look at tonight's headlines. Romanians go to the polls, this time to choose their parliament. Newly appointed EU officials visit Kyiv to meet Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Serbia to cooperate in an investigation over a blast in Kosovo, which Pristina called a Serbian act of terror. Protests in Georgia are intensifying. Crowds have taken to the streets following the decision of the Georgian Dream Party to suspend EU membership negotiations until 2028. Protesters were met with a violent response from the police, who deployed a water cannon and tear gas to stop the marchers. Our correspondent Don Arleth has more.
It's been a tumultuous year for the people of Georgia. Here, as you can see behind me, mass protests taking place in front of the parliament building here in Tbilisi. This comes on the heels of the Georgian Dream government refusing to actually do what is enshrined in the Constitution, that is to further the European Union ambitions of the people of Georgia. This is what the people of Georgia have to say. There are literally thousands of people here protesting here in the center of the city. Again, we have a situation where the president of Georgia, the democratically elected president of Georgia, says she believes that the government is illegitimate, and therefore she is not going to leave her post come mid-December when the Georgian Dream wants to change the law and actually make the democratically elected president chosen by parliament. She says she is not stepping down. She calls this government illegitimate. We've seen the European Union has somewhat severed ties with the Georgian Dream. They're calling on the government to allow these people to peacefully protest. As you can see, largely there are peaceful protests, but there are a few people taking some of their frustrations out here on the parliament building, as they believe that they are being pushed towards Russia. Earlier this year, we saw the passage of the Foreign Agents Bill, which has been a huge crackdown on free speech and expression and has caused many problems, as you can see. How long this is going to last is anybody's guess, but the people are sick and tired of the current government led by the Georgian Dream. Don Arleth reporting from Tbilisi, TVP World.
We need a European future. They just took one guy, my friends and my best friend's brother, and we're asking the reason why they just took her brother, and they have no any answer, and they're telling get out of here or I will arrest you as well. We will not surrender, so our future is in Europe. So I'm not afraid, I'm here, and I was asking them, so take me as you take that boy. Like if you take this boy, we are working with me, he was innocent, and why are you letting me here? They want to kill us, not that enemies who are just Why are you taking?
We go to Romania now. Romanians have voted in the country's parliamentary elections. Following last week's controversial first round of presidential elections, today's vote will be crucial to define the country's future political path. Will it stay on the pro-European course or veer to the right, like some other European countries already have? Our correspondent, Pavel Chaskovsky, is on site in Bucharest. Pavel, what do we know at this point?
Well, it's past 9 p.m. in Romania local time, so that means that the voting has just closed, the voting in the general elections. We are now in the Central Electoral Office in Bucharest, where the votes are being counted and the results should be known. We would actually be one of the first to be informed about the results of today's vote. The turnout for today's elections was about 51%. That means that around 9 million Romanians went to the polls. This is comparable to the last week's presidential elections. And they went to the polls to elect their new parliament, government and future prime minister. So these are, as Romania is a parliamentary country, these are the most significant elections in this year's political calendar. I was earlier today in front of one of the polling stations in Bucharest, where I asked some of the Romanians who had already voted about their hopes and fears when it comes to today's vote. And one could sense a growing apprehension when it comes to Romania slipping into the Russian area of influence, but also one could sense a need for change. Please have a listen to some of the responses that I've got.
I think it will stay the same because Călin Georgescu is not only with the wrong direction, but has a lot of hallucinating declarations. And I think people will go straight to America.
The first round of the presidential elections was extremely unexpected for a lot of young people from our country. It was a big shock for us, and a lot of my friends are worried that if this election will go wrong, they will move out of the country.
I vote for better, for change.
Experts and polls show that Romanians are growing tired of the current ruling coalition, that consists of Social Democrats and Liberals, and this is why, ahead of today's vote, the polls were led by the hard right Our Party with 22% of support. They were followed by Social Democrats with 21% of support, but there is a serious contender growing in the form of the USR party. Now, the USR is a centrist party whose leader, Elena Lasconi, quite surprisingly got to the presidential runoff, to the second round of presidential elections. So who will win in today's vote? Well, last week's elections showed that everything is possible, and we shall know very soon. Back to the studio.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Pavel. I'm sure you'll be keeping us informed as things develop. Have a good evening. Staying in Romania now, the country's constitutional court is expected to issue a ruling on Monday on whether the results of the first round of presidential elections should be annulled. The vote, held last Sunday, saw far-right candidate Călin Georgescu emerge as the winner with 23% of the vote, despite polling at less than half of that in the run-up to the vote. Susanna Jurek reports.
Over the last few days in Romania, crowds have been protesting against Călin Georgescu, who won the first round of presidential elections.
We're here to protest against this fascist movement that's coming here into Romania, against this leader that they have, Călin Georgescu, who appeared out of nowhere, clearly sponsored by Putin and by Moscow.
The results of the November 24th elections shocked domestic and international observers alike. Legal institutions have questioned the validity of the outcome, with the Constitutional Court set to decide Monday on whether to annul the result.
Now what the Constitutional Court claims, it's to recount all the votes, that mean 9 million and something votes, which was cast in the previous election, which is really a madness.
This is supported by allegations of voting irregularities. These suspicions arise due to the opinion polls failing to predict Georgescu's victory.
May he be, for instance, a centrist, may he be a completely different profile, it would still be a surprise. This incredible rise coming from basically nowhere in the poll.
Experts allege that Georgescu's landslide victory was aided by campaigning irregularities, particularly by his use of social media.
The guys who voted for Călin Georgescu voted for someone unknown, and the voters didn't know who is this crazy guy. It was a TikTok production, a crazy guy saying strange things, but he's a candidate anti-system.
The big question is if Moscow was involved to disinformate, to a vast hybrid war operation via TikTok. It's very impossible to for a candidate who was measured to almost 10-13% to obtain in 1 week double that all.
The law in Romania allows for an election annulment if suspicion of fraud is proven. Should the court decide in favor of a vote recount, this will prove the most contested election Romania has seen since its transition to democracy in 1989.
Moving to Ukraine now, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy held high-stakes meetings in Kyiv today with prominent European leaders, including Kaja Kallas, the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. These discussions are seen as crucial for strengthening Ukraine's ties with the European Union and addressing ongoing support amidst the war. Our correspondent, Oz Kataji, is in the Ukrainian capital. Oz, what is the significance of these meetings?
Well, both the new EU Council President and the new EU top diplomat made this visit to Kyiv, showing how important Ukraine is in the priorities of the European Union. Both leaders visited to where I am standing now behind me, to the memorial wall where photos of soldiers who have fallen in battle since Russia invaded in 2014 at the start of all of this, paying their respects before meeting with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy for talks. Now, as to the outcome of those talks, during a joint press conference, they did announce certain issues, such as the EU will be opening 2 accession negotiation clusters in the first half of 2025. That's to help ease Ukraine's entry into the European Union, which could still be many years off. So this is just the start of that process, which will be received warmly here in Kyiv. The EU Council President Antonio Costa also said he was impressed by the reforms that Kyiv had made, that the EU had demanded from Ukraine, and he assured of the continued diplomatic, humanitarian, financial and military support to Ukraine, which again, that'll be the most important thing for Ukraine going forward, is knowing if there is any faltering in that support from Washington, that the EU will still be there to support it with military and financial means to continue its fight to defend itself from Russian aggression.
Well, that sounds all very positive for Ukraine, Oz. Thank you very much for that, and stay safe in Kyiv. The government of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz hasn't been officially dismissed yet, but the campaign for snap elections is already underway. Christian Democrat leader Friedrich Merz is the favourite to head the new government, but much still remains up in the air. Michael van Blomstein reports.
Within the Christian Democrat CDU party, there's plenty of optimism. They're leading in the polls for the upcoming snap elections, likely to be held in February. Friedrich Merz, the leader, has taken a commanding lead, better than the 3 governing parties combined. The far-right AfD comes in second. The main campaign issue is crystal clear.
Well, it's the economy.
Germany's economy has been stuttering, with a recession looming for the 2nd year in a row. Most recently, workers of Volkswagen have been protesting layoffs. Talks between unions and the car manufacturer broke down over the weekend. Mass strikes could take place over the coming week.
We have been constructive while in opposition, but we have not been able to avoid many mistakes, many excesses, and above all, I will come back to this, serious excesses in economic policy and in other areas, which have led to the current situation of our economy.
The elections will be meaningful for Central and Eastern Europe as well. While the war in Ukraine has so far taken a backseat to domestic issues, the contrast between Merz and Scholz is striking. The former Chancellor has criticised Merz for his stand towards Russia.
It wants to deliver more long-range missiles to Ukraine, and that is a risk of escalation. It is something that he, a responsible politician, would not do, and he would not endanger Germany's security and Germans' safety.
But a Merz administration is no guarantee for a tougher stance towards Moscow. Without a coalition, he won't be able to have a majority. Merz will likely have to choose between Scholz's SPD and the Greens. They are much closer to Merz's position on Ukraine.
More bilateral and multilateral diplomacy in order to build and maintain a stable coalition pro-Ukraine and towards Russia, containing Russia more and so on and so forth, can be expected.
If Merz, however, decides to form a coalition with the SPD, the main question will be how willing he would be to trade his hawkish stance on Russia for domestic policy goals.
Yes, it can be. It can be a bargaining chip, yes, and they need a huge bargaining chip.
Merz would be taking over when Donald Trump's second US presidency is well underway. If help from across the Atlantic dries up as a result, European allies of Ukraine would need to step up their financing.
But we also have to ask ourselves, Chancellor Merz, is he willing to step up in the military support financially? Because he has been so far hesitant when it comes to, say, lifting the constitutionally mandated debt brake in Germany.
It may be an almost certainty who the next Chancellor will be. But the rest depends on how the chips fall when the Germans go to the polls.
We go now to Serbia, where the government has offered cooperation and assistance to Kosovo authorities investigating an explosion of the Ibar-Lepenak Canal. Kosovo has called the explosion, which occurred on Friday, a terrorist attack, saying they suspect Belgrade's involvement. Anastasia Yanchenko reports.
Apart from Kosovo, Serbia also wants to find out what exactly happened to the canal. The explosion, which damaged critical infrastructure, occurred near the border between Kosovo and Serbia on Friday. Belgrade's willingness to participate in the investigation comes after Kosovo's foreign minister alleged that Serbia was involved.
The attack was carried out by professionals. This was another criminal and terrorist attack, which we believe comes from gangs directed and orchestrated by Serbia, which has both the interest, the readiness and the ability to cause such attacks and damage. As a serious state, we do not accept such accusations. We also did not say, and I won't say today, that Mr. Kurti directly ordered that attack. Our own investigation will show what really happened. We are open to cooperation with Pristina.
In connection with the attack, the Kosovo police have arrested 8 people.
During a search, we have confiscated an arsenal of weapons, ammunition, explosives, other equipment, including insignias, hundreds of uniforms and other military equipment. These will serve as relevant evidence.
Earlier in November, Kosovo increased security measures around critical infrastructure and services. This came after 2 attacks on a police station and a municipality in the northern part of the country. Tensions between the countries have been ongoing for years. In 2008, Kosovo declared independence from Serbia. Belgrade has not recognized Kosovo as an independent state, even though over 100 countries in the world have.
Romania's top court has ordered a vote recount following the unexpected result of the first round of the presidential election. Turmoil has gripped Romania since Călin Georgescu, a largely unknown far-right NATO skeptic with pro-Russia leanings, rocketed to victory in the first presidential round last Sunday. Romania's top national security officials said on Thursday the country was targeted by cyber attacks intended to influence the first round of voting. Parliamentary elections took place on Sunday, the 1st of December. To explore both the national and international implications of this, we're joined by Eusebio Slavetescu, former Romanian diplomat and a political analyst. Excuse me for butchering your name there. I hope you'll forgive me.
No problem, and thank you for having me on your program.
It's a pleasure as always. So, if they are annulled, the first round of the presidential elections, what happens next?
If they are confirmed?
No, if they're annulled.
Annulled?
Yes.
Well, then we're going to have a first presidential round all over again.
Okay.
I don't think that will happen, however. The counting has been done, according to my informations, and the order of the candidates hasn't changed yet. We are about to have tomorrow morning probably a press conference that will confirm these things. However, nobody really knows. But as has been all this week and Sunday night, seems that nobody actually knows what we're doing anymore.
So nothing's actually likely to change from what you know at the moment?
From what I know, no.
OK, so what impact, because the parliamentary elections were held today, what impact, if any, do you think this question mark over the presidential vote has had on the parliamentary election?
A big one. A big one. 5 years ago, in the legislative elections, the turnout was around 35%. Today, we went beyond 52%. So that difference there is what happened in the first round of the presidential election. Absolutely, right. It impacted hugely.
Okay.
As I said many times, we woke up the next day with somebody who had no idea who this guy is and with some very dangerous ideas.
All right, so you raise a couple of points. Let's start with the surprise. I mean, well, first of all, the number of Romanians who voted. 52% you mentioned.
For today.
For today?
Yeah.
What has changed in the attitude of the Romanian voting group?
Since last Sunday?
Yeah.
I will tell you what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I saw in all my bubbles, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything, people who have never posted something about politics. Never. They have in every single day posting about the danger of fascism, about the danger of this guy, Călin Ceaușescu, who wants to take us out of the EU, out of NATO, who wants to stop help for Ukraine. All of these things that we don't want, that the overwhelming majority of Romanians, despite this vote of the first round, we are pro-Ukraine, we are pro-EU, we are Euro-Atlantics, all of that.
Understood. OK, so what does this mean in terms of the presidential election? If the results you don't think will change, how is that going to influence Romania's relationship with the EU, with NATO?
So the good news about 20 minutes ago is that the pro-EU, the pro-NATO, pro-Euro-Atlantic partnership are around 60-something%. If the polls are confirmed, obviously, we will have to wait tonight.
But in the parliamentary election?
In the parliamentary election, which means that we will going to have a pro-EU, pro-Ukraine, pro-NATO government. And this, let me tell you, is such a release. I mean, it's been hours. I mean, it's been the whole week. Everybody who's been... I mean, imagine Romania, a steadfast ally, a reliable ally in the region, now turning fascist all of a sudden.
Right. OK, so this didn't happen in a bubble, did it? I mean, there is talk of the Chinese-owned social media platform TikTok influencing Romanian voters' attitudes.
Absolutely.
What can you share about that?
So on one hand, the question is this organic? This jumping from 6 to 8% to 22 to 22% in just a matter of days. I repeat, just a matter of days. So everybody right now is asking, is this an organic thing, which I do not think it is? Or is it maybe at some point, of course, this is not just a cocktail of TikTok, obviously. The Romanian society, the civil society, the last president we had 2 terms, the political parties were kind of fed up with everything, just like it happens all across the EU right now. So it didn't come out of nowhere. But obviously, somebody behind this guy, Călin Ceaușescu, knew exactly which algorithms, which AI to use to push for those videos.
Right. Okay. So, as we said, TikTok Chinese-owned.
Yeah.
Russia, well known for its hybrid warfare, especially using information technology.
Absolutely.
Do you believe there is a partnership between the two countries, China and Russia, in terms of hybrid warfare against Europe?
I do not believe. I know so. President Xi and President Vladimir Putin, since the war started, but even before, but especially since the war started, they have been visiting themselves in Moscow and in Beijing for too many times. And I think the last time President Xi was in Kremlin, and now I quote, in the press conference, he said something along the lines, "We cannot have a better friendship than what we have with the Russians." So absolutely. I mean, we know China is helping Ukraine already is helping Russia in Ukraine with hardware, and some people say also with weapons.
Well, dual-use weaponry and so on. But little is said of what's going on under the surface. In other words, the sharing of information, sensitive information, the use of technology such as TikTok. Do you believe that that is also part of China's aid to Russia's war effort?
I have no doubt. I have no doubt this evil foursome, if I may, China, Russia, Iran and North Korea, they will do everything in their power to undermine our Western lifestyle, our liberal international world. I have no doubt about that.
Right. Okay, so at the moment we have Hungary and Slovakia, both of whom are turning away slightly from the European Union ideals and support for Ukraine. You don't believe Romania is going to join them in that trajectory?
If the results are confirmed, I do not think so.
Okay, excellent. So what happens next? What happens next in terms of Romanian politics, in terms of going forward with regard to its role in international bodies, especially with NATO?
So it all depends on next Sunday, what happens in the run-up for the presidential elections. My guess is the pro-EU candidate will win. I'm hoping to be a landslide victory. I can understand that a lot of the folks in Romania, they voted for this guy just because they saw some, some fashionable videos. He has a good standing. He speaks pretty well. Right. He has no substance on what he's saying. But I can understand you can be foolish at once. But now it's been a week. Everybody in Romania, every household, every house, every city, every village, everywhere, people are talking about this. And people are saying what this guy means. I don't know anybody of Romanian who would vote for this guy knowingly that he wants to get out of the EU.
Is there anything else that he offers, Georgescu, apart from this moving away from the EU and NATO, that appeals to the Romanian electorate?
I know what appeals to him is Vladimir Putin.
Okay, but why are people so exercised by him? I mean, you've explained, his attitude towards the EU and NATO, but was there part of his message which was initially attractive to Romanians?
It wasn't really part of his message, of his initial message. These are stuff that he kind of kept saying on the margins of everything else. Because Romania saying you want to take Romania out of the EU, it doesn't do well.
Okay.
Because we have incredibly profited from the EU, just like the Polish people have.
Right. He called the NATO missile defense system that's been placed in Romania a, quote, shame of diplomacy. What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I think he's fully in line with Kremlin propaganda. He declared a couple of weeks ago, he declares his admiration for the Russian wisdom in governing, right? Mm-hmm. He thinks of himself, and he said it publicly a couple of days ago, that he is the chosen one. He was chosen and sent by God. That very ugly religious mysticism is everything. Is a very toxic cocktail.
Toxic cocktail, but he still went from single digits to double digits in the first round of the presidential election. I mean, how did that happen? It can't just have been TikTok.
Not just a TikTok, obviously. So probably the algorithms played a role. The absolute disappointment with the incumbent president that we have, Klaus Johannes, for the past two mandates, who basically on foreign policy defense did the right things, just like everybody in the region, or maybe not everybody, but most of it. But other than that, he's been a president that's been absent. The impression the Romanian people got is that he just don't like them.
Right.
He's been that absent. And also the coalitions, he started with the liberals, and then the liberals were the enemies of the socialists, and then they brought them together. Now they are in a huge coalition in Romania.
Okay. Well,
also, if I may, just
very quickly,
just one more comment. This is also the complete collapse of the traditional political party system in Romania.
Complete collapse of the traditional political parties in Romania. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Slavitiscu.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Bye-bye. And that's all from this bulletin of World News. Good night.